requirement in these kind of projects is to first put a check to see if the file exists. If the file does not exist, then we should not proceed with executing our ETL workflow. So this is a common check that we might have to put, and there's no efficient way to do it through the already provided tasks in SSIS. So we are going to use a script task and make a small script and check if the file exists. So there's if we go to the control flow in a package and see in the SSIS toolbox on the left hand side, we'll see that there is a task called the script task under the common heading. There's a task called the script task. So just drag and drop that task onto a designer, and we should be able to configure that task. Now, a script task basically deals with variables. So you need to pass some input parameters to the script task. You also have an option to collect value out of your script, so you can have some output parameters as well. Now, the way to pass the parameter values to a script task is obviously through variables, because we do not want to be hard coding anything. But even if you want to hard code, there's no other way. You have to pass variables to a script task. So the first step is to create the variables. To create the variables, we need to go to the top right and click on this window, and a new window will pop up at the bottom. That's called the variables. To add a variable, just click here in the left hand side, do an add variable, and then you can give your properties for the variable. Now, as in any other project, it's always a good practice to follow a naming standard. For any project that we are working in real time, there would be a naming standard guides which we would need to follow. So for now, we'll just follow a standard and start any variable name with a small case VAR, and then we'll give a meaningful suffix to that variable. So the first thing, our requirement is to test if the file exists. So the first thing that we need to know is the path of the file. Where is the file supposed to exist? So what is the file path? So I'll create a variable called the variable file path. We can leave the scope to package for now. Otherwise, there is an option to change the scope for the variable, because we are within the package and creating the variable. The scope is package. We could have also created it for a project or for the solution to use it across the packages in a project. We can change the data type, so it's going to be a string value because this is a file path. So I'll make it string over here, and then I am not going to dynamically assign any value because I have a fixed file path, so I can just give my value. Now the value of the file path you can just find to wherever is your file folders. So if it's within your same PC, I can just copy the file path and I can go back to the designer and paste it over here. So this is going to be my file path, or where I should be looking for the file. Now I can just add the file name that I should be looking for over here, or I can create another variable and then concatenate them in the expression and call it. So for now, because we are looking at the script task, I'll just add the file name over here. So the file I am looking for is called the employee data file, which is a text file. So I'm going to give this name over here along with the extension. So it's called the employee data.txt. So this is my entire file path with the directory structure as well as the file name. Now I also want an output from the script task that tells me whether the file exists or not, and if it exists, I want the output to return as true, and if it does not, then I want it to return as false. So I'm going to add another variable, and following the naming standards variable, I'm going to call it file exists. Now this time the data type should be Boolean, because the script that I'm going to write is going to return only a Boolean data type. So I have to make it Boolean. So here's Boolean. and I can assign a default value of false or true, whichever I want. So let it be false for now. So this is the default value. If there is no value assigned to the task to this variable, then it would be false. Now we'll go back to the script task and configure its properties. So again, first step, give it a meaningful name. So we can say check for file, or you can just give the name check for employee data file, and then double click on it, and the editor would open up. Now in the editor, the first option itself is the script option, and you'll see that it gives you an option to select the script language. So if you click over here and go to the drop down, you'll see that there are two options. So depending on the version that you installed, you would have the corresponding versions for either Visual Basic or Visual C#. So you can choose any language you want to code in depending on your comfort level. For now, we'll leave it to C#. Entry point is going to be main. Then it's asking us to provide the read-only variables. Read-only variables are the input variables that we are going to pass, the input parameters. So I need to pass my file path, which has my directory path as well as the file name to check for the file. If you click on the right over there, it will give you a list of all the variables that are available. So system variables are always available. So it has given us a list of system variables, but we need the user variable that we created, which is the variable file path. So we are going to select that by putting a check mark over here and say OK. And then I want the output to return in terms of a variable again. So this is my output parameter that I'm collecting from the script. So I'll again go, and this time the output can only be contained in one of the user-defined variables. So we are going to select the one that we want, which is the variable file exists, and say OK. So now I've defined my input parameters and output parameters for the script that I'm going to write using Microsoft Visual C#. All right, general is nothing, expressions we can pass. If we want to assign it to a variable, to an expression. Now going back to the script, the next step that we need to do is edit script. So click on this button, and it will take some time, and it would pop up your Visual C# screen where you can edit your script. Okay, it will take a moment to come because it's the first time that we have been clicking on it. Okay, so now it has come up. This is the way it would look, and there would be some default code already there, or there would be a template that you can build upon your code. So looking at what is already there, you can see that there is some text which says introduction to script task. So what it does, it's a general description of the script task. Then you have some namespaces created. Then you have some default task over here created. So if you click on namespaces, you'll see that it is using some libraries which are there. Then it has the main, and we define the entry point as main. So whatever code we want to write, we need to write it over here. Now, before performing any file-specific function, there's one library or namespace that we need to add to this script, which is the system.io, and that would allow the script to have the ability to interact with your system input output. Or basically, if you're wanting to check any files which exist or any directories, so then you need to provide this namespace called using system.io. So you have to just click over here. That is the very first step you need to do. Otherwise, the file functions which are there for C# won't be available to you. So just click on this over here and add using system.io. and a semicolon. Okay. Then the next step is to directly go down to this portion where it says public void main, and it already says add your code here. So it gives you a hint where you need to add your code. So just leave that, that's a comment because, and then we can add a code over here. Now what we want to do is check for the existence of the file. So we have a variable that we have defined as an output variable where we want to collect the output result of the check whether the file exists or does not exist. So the way to write this, and this is basically C#. So if you already know C#, you would know how to write. If you do not know, then you can refer Google and build your basic script, or you can do some self-study on C#. So now what you have to write is DTS, which is data transformation, and you'll get, you can put a dot. So as it works with Visual Basic as well, it will keep on suggesting you the various options, which are the valid options. So then you can go and select variables. And then you have to give a square bracket, and it will show you how you need to write. So DTS.variables is basically we are referring to one of the variables that we have created in our DTS package. DTS is the old name for SSIS. It's Data Transformation Services. So it's basically referring to the variable that we have created within the Data Transformation Services package, which is nothing but an SSIS package. So now we have to write DTS.variables and the variable name within quotes. The variable name is variable file exists. And then we are going to assign the value of this variable. So dot value, okay, equal to, so what is the value going to be? It is going to be the result of the check of whether the file exists or not. So then if you just type file dot, it will give you all the functions, which are the built-in functions in C#, which are related to the file checks or copying file or the different operations that you can perform on the file. So the operation that we want to perform right now is file dot exists. And then we need to provide an input parameter for it to be able to check whether the file exists or not. Now, if you just go ahead on this, it keeps on suggesting you the syntax as well as what is the purpose of the function and what is the output data type going to be. So this is going to be a Boolean. That's why we had to define our variable that we created as Boolean. So it determines whether the specified file exists. Path is the file to check. So dot exists. Now it's asking us to give the path. Now the path is in a variable called variable file path. Oh, so DTS dot variables, and the variable is variable file path dot value, and then you have to convert it into a string because otherwise it will not be able to assign it to any of the variables. So we have to add a toString function and then a semicolon. So that's very important. For all the lines of code that we add, we have to end them with a semicolon. So now just enter. And now you can see that there are no red lines below the script, so it should be fine syntactically so far, but we'll have a check in any case. And now since we're just seeing whether the file exists or not, and we're not adding any other stages to it, we'll add a message box. So it will just pop up a message saying what is the result that we have actually got. So to add that is a command called message box dot show, and then over in brackets you can display your text. So we are just going to get this value. So we're not going to add any code to it. we are just going to simply get the value of this variable. So it will either show us true or false. And then we need to convert it to string because that is a variable value and it would not have any, it would not be able to show any Boolean results. It has to be string. So this is a basic code that we have added. Okay. So details.variables to refer to any SSIS variables, whatever is the variable name, you have to give it within quotes and within a square bracket. Then if you want to refer to the value of that variable, you have to add .value. We have added using system.io, that is the class system.io. As you can see, when I put my mouse over that, I get this task that it's system.io file. System.io provides all these functions related to the files. So file.exists, these are already provided functions by C#. Details.variables, I have given the file path, I've converted to string to be able to collect the output of that function. And then I have just put a simple message box saying variable file exists.value .toString. Now, one thing you need to remember while coding in C# is that it is case sensitive. So you have to be very specific with your cases. So if you change a capital F to a lowercase f, that would result in error. So it is case specific and case sensitive. So you have to be careful with your cases. Now, once you have written your script, you can just save it over here. And it will get saved as part of your script. Okay. And then we can just close this window. And once we try to say an OK, now we are back to the script editor. If we say OK over here, and if there's any error in the script, a syntactical error or the compile error, it will now try to compile the script. If there's any error, it would give us a warning message over here. So let's just say OK. Okay. And also the way to find out if there is any error is if there are any red underlines when you're writing your code within the script, then it means that there is an error with that line. All right. So it didn't give us any message, so it should be fine. And now we have this basic task. We can just save a package and try to run it, and it should run fine. So 0 errors, 0 warnings. Okay, now it has given up that pop-up box which we added using the message box code, and it is saying true. That means a file exists. If we say OK, it will complete the execution of the package and we can just come back to this mode. Okay. So it has been successfully able to check for the existence of the file, and it converted the output to true, which is good because that means it is working, because the default value that we provided was false. So it has changed it to true. That means it has actually been able to do what we wanted it to do. Now, if let's say just go and change some name to some arbitrary name to show that the file does not exist and just to check that the code works, I've converted the name to xyz.txt. Now again, let's save it and run this. And now it has given false. So the code works. I've been able to test the code. And I can just click on this to come out of this window. Okay, so this is one of the simple checks that we will have in many of the projects which are reading from a file. So if we are going to design an ETL workflow, we can do it this way. This is the check that we would be having. Now this is one of the checks. This is the first point of the check that we'll be having. Another thing that we would be testing when we are reading from the file and we want to make sure that the file exists, we have made sure, okay, the file exists. The next thing that we would want to be doing is to check if there's any data in the file. If there's no data in the file, then we can just say that let's skip that file and move on to the next portion of the code, or let's just stop the execution of the flow because there's no data in the file, and so there's no point of wasting the processing power and time of SSIS working on a flow when there is no data. So we can just choose to come out of the package and complete the package. So we can design a package that way. So that is one. Okay, there is something. So basically, the script file function is used to check if file exists or not. No, that is not the function of the script task. The function of the script task is to give you the ability to write a customized script. Now, if you, whatever you can do through C# or Visual Basic, so they are complete coding languages in themselves, and you can do all kinds of functions and all kinds of uh, operations using those languages. So all those operations can be done. It's not to check for the existence of the file. It's just an example that I'm giving you, which is commonly used in an ETL workflow, which is it's a real-time scenario for an ETL workflow. Otherwise, you can use your script task to do any kind of thing. So you want to generate a function within the task and design a loop within the task and do some counting within the task, count the number of rows or whatever. So depending on what you have as input and what you're passing it as input, what is your requirement, you can write anything. As with any coding language, you can write any code within the script task. So these are just some of the examples that we are seeing which are relevant to the ETL